Dear members of the Select and Standing Committee on Appropriations, the 2023 budget tabled by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana breaks promises made by President Ramaphosa in his SONA. This budget leaves millions behind in poverty by keeping the rich rich and the poor poor. Our biggest issue with this budget is that it does not cater for the poor majority and instead provides relief for the rich. As an organization with a constituency of nearly 1 million people, the majority living in low-income backgrounds, we have constantly made our demands clear with proposals on how to find revenue to help lift millions out of poverty by taxing the rich more. Each month, we communicate with thousands of social grant recipients and those facing challenges receiving social grants. Ahead of the budget, over 4,000 budget tips were submitted to National Treasury, calling on Finance Minister Godongwana to increase all grants by 500. We welcome the increases on social grants. However, honorable members, the increases are still not enough. While an additional 30 billion rand allocation for social grants may sound like a lot of money, food inflation basically cancels these social grant increases. The grant increases are not adequate to bandage the high cost of living that many households are unable to keep up with.
This is Thandi. She went grocery shopping for her 2 children with the child grant support money. Out of everything she needed, she had to choose one over the other because the money was simply not enough. On top of that, she still has to get her kids to school and get them other basic necessities. The groceries she bought would not even last for 2 weeks. Now imagine what happens to a pensioner who has to take care of an entire household with her grant money. Yet in Parliament, people celebrated when the grant increases were announced. The people who celebrated are people who have salaries of probably more than 1 million per annum. But pensioners like Gogos continue to go through this heartbreaking situation.
Grant mina ngibona ingekho enough ngoba khona manje ngibuke ukuthi igroza yakhona ayiphelelanga iyashota. Akho shebo asiphumanga, insipho yokwasha ayiphumanga, ngapha mele ngibhadala i-crash is 470 umntwana. So le mali le ayikho enough for ukuthi ingangiqhuba inyanga yonke.
Pensioners have made their demand to increase their grant to 2,500 rand. As always, we will let the Gogos speak for themselves.
Yalibingelela iParliament nabacazi bezimali. Ngiyakhala la kwabacaza izimali. Ngiyakhala ngalo 100 rand ukuthi indaba thina njalo sifakele imali encane engazosiza ngalutho. Kodwa abaphezulu bahamba ngako konke bayaphumelela. Thina bogogo ayisanelisi le mali incane ngoba nezingane ayisebenzi nabazukulu bayafunda nje kodwa akukho ukuphumelela ukuthi bathole imisebenzi. Siyafundisa senza konke, ukudla kuyakhuphuka ezitolo kodwa imali yogogo ayifakwa ngokufana. Lo 100 rand awuzosisa ndawo, onginoma usise ndawo siyakhala nje njalo. Siyakhala impela ngale mali. Sicela abacazi bezimali basicabangele ngoba angeke sikhale size sife.
Ngiyalibingelela iParliament lezimali. Mina igama lami ngingugogo uThoko Ngubane. Anganelisiwe ile mali esikhushulelwe yona. Okungangibangalisile ngonyaka odluli sithole yona le mali yahlehliswa 100 rand kahle kahle kodwa yahlukaniswa ngo-October sithola u10 rand kuphele u100 rand. Ayinganelisile nakancane le mali, ayiwenzi umehluko kuthina abantu abahluphekayo. Utheme ekhipha lesabelo sezimali laba bahola kakhulu azange abaTax. Kusho ukuthi la eSouth Africa umuntu ohluphekayo uyohlala egcinelezeleke njalo. Uthi laba abamkahle banganikwa abatheswanga ngani bona bebenemali enkulu ukuze sikwazi ukuthi le mali sikhushulelwe le mali.
Honorable members, it saddens us that the 350 grant was not increased to match inflation. The budget cut for the 350 grant will see 1 million people excluded from the grant.
I'm not happy in how things turned out because I was expecting that 350 grant will be increased as we went to marches submitting memorandums, So I'm not happy at all as it does not meet monthly needs of people. So 350 divided by 30 days is 11 rand and some cents. So it's not enough. Even bread doesn't cost 11 rands. It's more than that. So how do they expect people to live on 11 rands every day with 350? And also, in concerning 350, some people are not even getting them because they are approved with no paid dates. They should fix their system also. And again, 350 should be turned into a basic income grant because people use them for their survival. Some do not work, jobs are scarce, and people cannot go to work every day because nobody wants to hire them. So basic income grant would be a great idea if the government will implement it instead of extending it every year. They should just consider making it permanent and compulsory for people 18 to 59 years. So I'm not happy in how things turned out because every other grant was increased except 350s. Why is that?
Igama lami nguneli ngihola i-350 kuphela angisebenzi ngihlala ngiyi-1 nginabantwana ayingenzeli nix angina-income engenayo angina-nix i-350 phela ngelanga izinto zikhuphukile siyacela baba sicela nje usikhuphulele kancane noma ingathi 600 angeke kuze kufane.
I'm not happy at all about the budget speech that taken place on the 22 of February 2023. Since well the government knew that we laid our complaint, we went to marches to complain about the 350 grant that we wanted to be turned to a basic income grant, which it can't afford black people's needs 3 times per day. So we demanded that the government can raise 350 grant to 650 at least, so that people can be able to afford their monthly meals. So the government does not take us serious.
It is also disappointing that the issues with the 350 grant are still not fixed, and more concerning that it is continuing as though it is functioning properly when we all know that it is not. Maladministration has seen those who qualify for the grant struggling to get it, and unfair and exclusionary regulations resulting in millions who qualify for the grant declined for it. It is saddening that little has been done to fix all those issues. We have previously asked this committee to hold SASSA and DSD accountable for their failures. Can this committee tell us what it has done to fix all issues with the 350 grant? Has this committee consulted SASSA and DSD at all? Over the past few months, similar issues with the 350 grant seem to have extended to other social grants as well. The closure of post offices has left grant recipients such as pensioners stranded after traveling long distances to access their grant money. In some cases in rural areas, Goggers have to travel long distances just to get their grant, but the closure of post offices and some SASSA branches had them traveling back home empty-handed. In December 2022, glitches in the social grants system left mothers stranded in supermarkets trying to buy food for their children with their gold SASSA cards. Just last week, we received multiple reports that the child grant was not paid on time and people had to ring the alarm before they could get any communication from SASSA or DSD. Honorable members, this is unacceptable, especially because we know this government is capable of ensuring that things work as they are supposed to. We have seen it before. The deteriorating service for millions who rely on the grant system to access cash is failing people, and to witness it is heartbreaking. The budget is taxes and allocations. We were told by your colleagues at the Joint Finance Committee that we must not come to their public hearings and talk about social grant amounts and that we should stick to the revenue proposals. They said this committee, the Appropriations, would be the ones to deal with social grants. So here we are, talking to you about social grants not being increased enough. You will probably tell us there is not enough money to increase social grants. You cannot separate these issues. If the majority of members of parliament stand by, like they stood with state capture, and allow Treasury and the finance minister to pass budgets that cut social spending because you fail to raise enough revenue, people's anger towards you will continue to grow. We hear stories of how mothers won't eat so that there is enough food for their children because the child support grant is not enough. Treasury knows the social grant increases are not enough, but it appears the finance minister and Treasury were more concerned about the impact of tax on those who love their Norwegian salmon from Woolworths, salmon that costs nearly as the 350 grant someone has to survive on for a whole month. Our campaign to tax the rich has mass support. Our campaign called for an increase of personal income tax on those earning over 1 million rand. It happens that each committee member here knows very well what paying a bit more tax would mean, since each of you earn a salary of over 1 million rand. Would any committee member here go to bed hungry if they paid a bit more tax? The finance minister believes you can't afford to pay a bit more tax, but where is the evidence? Do you even know how much a loaf of bread costs?
It's no amper 10 rand 'n brood. It's too much expensive, bro. It's too expensive. Baie duur.
I haven't a clue. I just buy bread because we need it. I really haven't a clue what the bread price is. I think it's about 5 or 6 rand. I'm not sure.
A loaf of bread at the moment, that is a good question.
Cost-wise? Gosh, I have no idea.
Don't know.
The clip you just watched is about 10 years old from a documentary called Crumbs, which is about how food companies like Tiger Brands and Pioneer Foods colluded to increase the price of bread. At the moment, a loaf of bread costs around 15 rand. The point is, extreme inequality in our country requires real action. For the sake of making sure people can live with dignity, would taxing the rich more be that devastating? The fact that people were cheering when the finance minister announced that there won't be an increase in taxes on those who can afford to pay more tax is concerning. There is a cost of living crisis for the poor majority. There is a health crisis and an education crisis, yet there was that celebration. President Ramaphosa claims a basic income grant is being worked on. To turn the 350 SRD grant into a basic income grant, surely it is worth paying a bit more tax. Even if it means instead of that BMW that costs 2 million rand, someone has to settle for a Toyota Corolla instead.
I am pleading to Minister Godongwana to please fight corruption, increase the tax of the rich, give more than 350 to all caregivers.
Honorable members, we are not economists nor experts, but there is research and proposals by different economists on how to implement a wealth tax. The Davis Tax Committee recommended gathering data on assets and liabilities, which SARS has already started. This data can be used to design and implement a wealth tax, which could help increase social grants and help fund the basic income grant. We acknowledge the hard work of SARS to turn things around and improve compliance, including targeting offshore revenue estimated at 400 billion rand. More must be done to help SARS continue their important work to address non-compliance but also illicit financial flows. Each of you is here to serve the people, especially the poor majority. If you are committed to this, you need to go talk to your colleagues at the finance committees and your fellow party members and stop Treasury and the finance minister from delivering budgets that allow the poor to get poorer and the rich to get richer. There is immense wealth in our country, but if the pie keeps getting smaller, the pressure to find money will keep increasing. If all members of parliament stood in solidarity with the poor majority and gave half their salaries away, an extra 40,000 people would be able to access the 350 grant each month. Honorable members, it has become a common thing to pit grants and jobs against each other. We need both. The finance minister in October last year had planned on pitting grants against one another by stating that extending the 350 grant would mean other social grants would not be increased as much. The finance minister and treasury always talk about fiscal constraints when it comes to social grants, but that word doesn't apply to other areas of the budget, the ministerial handbook, or those driving luxury cars. Honorable members, this budget fails to help the poor majority find or create jobs because it fails to increase taxes on those who can afford to pay more. All of your political parties have made countless promises about creating jobs, but increasing social grants significantly and introducing a basic income grant would help millions travel to job interviews or start their own businesses. Social grants help local and informal economies in low-income communities. This is not a budget that this country should be proud of. Honorable members, as elected officials, if you think the majority of the electorate supports this budget, you are in for the shock of your lives next year.